I'm going to get started with just some general little presentation on about what law school is, since the purpose of tonight's event is to give you some information regardless of where you are in the process. So some of you are applying now, others are maybe just trying to learn a little bit about law school. Wherever you are in the process, though, I have some information that I think will be helpful. So let me start by saying the biggest thing that the best piece of advice for you is you need to think about why you want to go to law school. I talk to a lot of students, and that's the question I end up asking most, because there are lots of bad reasons that people might say they want to go to law school, but there's really only one good reason to go, and it's because you want to be an attorney. And a lot of times when I'm talking to students, especially if they've written a personal statement draft, and I'm asking them, the question I have is, okay, you've convinced me that you're a good student, but why do you want to be a lawyer? And the more convincing that you can be in explaining that in a personal statement, the better, but also the better for you, because you want to know that you're making the right decision for yourself. So you need to do a little research on your own. And that means for some people, maybe doing an internship or working in a law firm, something like that might be helpful if you haven't had that experience. Some folks, maybe you have a family member or friend who's gone to law school or worked as an attorney. Do whatever it takes to get out there and talk to folks who've been through this process and know what the job is like, because that is important. It's not Law and Order. It's not what it looks like on TV. And knowing what you're getting into is essential, not just to get into law school, but to be happy with the decision you've made and have a good career ahead of you. And if you're interested in, you don't know where to start for internships, some of the places that I've had students easily find positions, because they're always happy to have FGCU students, the Public Defender's Office and the local court, the 20th Judicial Circuit here in Fort Myers. They're always happy to have interest from FGCU students, and those are really great opportunities to learn firsthand. And like I said, law firms are always looking for students as well. So there are opportunities out there. But even if you're just saying that you've talked to people who've been to law school, that can be helpful to convince the admissions committee that you know what you're getting into. Now, the other question I get a lot of, though, directed at me from students who are earlier on in the process, starting out, or maybe they've just been admitted and they're worried about what they should major in. And the good news is there isn't a pre-law major. There's nothing specific that you must major in order to go to law school. In fact, if you look at the LSAC, the Admissions Council, there have been students admitted from pretty much every major on campus. The pages and pages that look like this. This is the first page showing the most common majors. Political science, which is the department that I'm in, is the most common major for law students. But notice that even that, the most common one is still, and this is a couple of years old, but we're still talking about less than 20% of applicants. So people are coming from all across the university. There's no major that's going to disqualify you from going to law school. My advice is always to pick a major that is rigorous, that's going to have you doing a lot of reading and writing and analysis, and most importantly, something you enjoy, because if you enjoy it, you're going to be able to, you'll be more motivated to put work into it, you'll get more out of it, your skills will be stronger at the end of that. So don't worry so much about, oh, I need to major in criminal justice or because of what I want to do. That's, some students do, but plenty of people, you could major in physics, you could major in art history and go to law school. So don't get hung up on what major you're choosing. Follow your passions, pick something that you enjoy, and you'll be a stronger student for it. The other big thing, which isn't always at the forefront of people's minds, though it should be, is the cost of law school. Law school is expensive, and you need to be aware of those costs. These also a few years old, but things haven't gotten any cheaper. So law school, there are differences between public and private, and whether you're going in state or out of state. Some schools will offer more scholarship programs. You need to be aware of the costs that you're getting into. There are some very good schools that will cost a lot of money. There are some not so great schools that will also cost a lot of money. You can't just go based on that. So you want to be aware of what you're getting into, and we'll talk tonight about Stetson specifically, but we'll also try to give you some tips about trying to position yourself well so you can reduce these costs and maybe be a little bit more competitive for some scholarships when you are applying. The last thing that I'll say in this little abbreviated talk about the law school process is your timeline for applying. The good news is that you don't need to be getting ready for your applications in your freshman year. During your freshman, sophomore years, just do the things you normally do. Pick a major you like, take courses that you find interesting, work hard and try to get good grades, and find things that you enjoy doing around campus and in the community. Again, it's not that there's going to be a magic golden ticket that if I do this service activity, that's going to get me into law school. Doing something that you're passionate about is going to read better in a personal statement than trying to read the minds of the people on admissions committees. So just do the things that you would do anyway. And then when you get to your junior year, that's when you want to start thinking ahead about the LSAT, the admissions test. You need to put some time into preparing for it. I usually tell students, if you're in your junior year planning to apply in the fall of your senior year, you should start looking into the LSAT now. Start casually practicing, learning what the different sections are during the spring semester, ramp that up a little bit. And then by the summer, once the spring semester ends in May, you can take a month or so just to work on the LSAT and then take the LSAT over the summer. And ideally, you will take either the June or the August or both, and you will start your senior year with the LSAT out of the way, with the score that you're happy with, and then you can just focus on finishing up the application. And really, the LSAT is 90% of the hurdle of getting to the application process. That's what holds students back. In the meantime, though, talk to faculty, think about letters of recommendation, think about where you might want to apply, take the LSAT over the summer, and then the only thing left to do is get those letters of recommendation in, write your personal statement, and submit your applications. The tip that I have would be apply early. The application window usually opens in September, and you can apply right away when school starts. You can have your acceptance already early on, before midterms even, and that makes your senior year a heck of a lot less stressful if you already know where you're headed. But anytime if you can apply anytime during the fall semester, you're ahead of the game. You have a better chance at getting both admission and scholarships. So absolutely try to think about this timeline, and it will benefit you. And the last thing I'll say, when you're writing a personal statement, make sure you get some feedback on it. If you don't know me and you want my feedback, just tell me you came to one of these events. I will be happy to provide you some feedback on personal statement, because it can be really hard to write a personal statement at first, because we're not taught to toot our own horn so much. It can be difficult to write about yourself, but having someone else read it, especially if they've read a bunch of these, usually a 10-minute meeting and a second draft, and the students I work with are ready to go. So take advantage of those resources that are out there. All right, that's my law school applications in a nutshell. I'm going to be happy to answer any questions you have in general about what we can offer here at FGCU. But I'm going to turn things over right now to our special guest, Darren Kettles, the Director of Admissions at Stetson Law, who's going to tell us all about what Stetson Law has to offer. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I think he has some information to share with you.
Okay, great. Yep, thank you, Dr. Ross. It was great. Nice introduction. And I agree with all those things that Dr. Ross shared. Certainly, we've worked together for some years now. Florida Gulf Coast students I've worked with continuously over the years. We matriculate several a year, and we are fairly close by. So for those of you looking to stay in closer proximity, there are currently 12 law schools in the state of Florida. Stetson was actually the first law school, started in 1900, and there's some after that. But we can go right into things. I just want to kind of share my screen a little bit because I thought it could be really helpful to kind of just share a little bit about what's going on. I want to make sure. Can you see that, Dr. Ross? Yes? Yeah, okay, good. So anyway, as Dr. Ross said, I'm Director of Admissions. I've been at Stetson Law School for a little over 15 years now. There's so many great law schools around. I happen to be a big fan, but as for a lot of you, you're going to apply to maybe 6 or 8 law schools. I'm not exactly sure how many of you are applying this cycle or in ones to follow. But if you are applying to this cycle, I just wanted to give kind of an update on where things were. In all my time in law school admissions, I've never seen a cycle that we just went through. It was the biggest boom since 2011 for law school applicants nationwide. So as LSAC reports, US News reports, I mean, there is a massive increase. Last year, there was 71,000 people that applied to 203 ABA accredited law schools. They produced just under 500,000 applications to these law schools. So an increase from 27% in the number of applications from the previous year. So it is quite something to see this sort of happening. Higher LSAT scores were all in every score band, higher GPAs as well. And as a result, a lot of law schools brought in larger classes that they intended. A lot of our credentials had all go up at many law schools too. There was a lot of deferrals that happened too because class sizes and people were accepting offers at very high rates. This year is supposed to be no different, which I'll kind of touch on too. But there were several themes that kind of maybe it contributed to all this. Of course, with the pandemic, people had time at home. People had time to do other things. They had to find things to do sometimes. Some people were able to take an overview of what was going on in the country. Some people saw a lot of the things that were happening, national events, politics, social issues, presidential race, the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I think there was a multitude of things that contributed to people and young people wanting to get involved. Sometimes people saw law school as a possibility for them. There were huge increases in Khan Academy and Law Hub, which were those LSAT preparation programs that were available on the lsac.org website. For those of you that are considering law school, those are free online portals that you can actually work on if you would like to do that. You can find those at the lsac.org website, but I will certainly leave my email address at the end to talk about that a little bit more. So anticipated trends for the next cycle. There were so many students that were applying to law school that there were so many deferrals. I mean, we deferred probably about 60 people from last year's cycle. And this is true of probably most law schools in the state of Florida, certainly in the Southeast as well. So we had students that, and even Dr. Ross said, I mean, applying early is always sort of this mantra. It's even more so now. So I just don't want you to find yourself in a situation. We had students with 165s, 168s. They were all on our priority wait list because we had no room for them. And even if I could get them a seat, I couldn't get them the kind of scholarship money that when somebody has worked that hard to produce that kind of applicant, they deserve scholarship. really high levels. And if I couldn't secure them, I certainly walk them through the option of deferral as well. So with students that didn't take deferrals, that were later in the cycle, they were the ones that were applying first thing when cycles opened this year. So our cycle opened October 1st. We had an onslaught. We're up 50% in applications from where we were last year at this time. And so I think that trend is pretty well nationally going on right now. And I was going to show you a slide that kind of gives you a snapshot of where things are at. Because so many law schools brought in really large classes last year, us included, probably about 25 or 30 more than we actually anticipated for our enrollment goals, we are looking to maybe reduce the size or at least bring it back to the exact enrollment we were looking for, and being really cognizant to making sure that we bring in a size of a class, and hopefully most law schools, that we believe we can give them the kind of resources and support and access that you would expect coming into professional school. So just a quick overview of where things are. And maybe when I get to the end, we can kind of see how many people are planning to apply this cycle, or maybe the next cycle. I don't know how things are going to shift, but all through the years that I've been doing this, there have been ebbs and flows. There's cycles. There's natural sort of ebbs and flows in the admission cycle. We just happen to be sort of in a seller's market right now with law school, and I think that's going nationally. So I'm just going to sort of stop sharing that slide. I'm going to share another one that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of kind of where we are at. Let me see that particular slide. Let's find it here.
Just based on the survey that I've got 12 out of the 20 people who are here responding, and it looks like a handful of people are graduating this year, but a lot of folks here are going to be applying in a future cycle, not necessarily even next year. So they're probably not graduating until 2023 or so.
Okay, fair enough. That's good.
I know from the names here, though, there are a few people who are applying right now. So it's a range.
Good to know. Well, I will certainly I'll certainly make sure that I have my contact information for those that might consider applying to Stetson this year. So let's see, I'm just going to slide this over.
And if you haven't filled out that survey yet, the link is in the chat. So go ahead and do that. Okay, so I don't know if you can all see this particular. Can you all see the screen now? Yeah, so this is hot off the press. So this was just from 11/16. It's LSAC data. I know Dr. Ross pulls from it at times as well, but this is sort of direct stuff. And you can actually go directly to the lsac.org website. You can see all this. There are some stuff that you can't see because if you don't have a member access code, but you can see this. And I think it's a really great thing to sort of look at to get an idea as you try to strategize with things too. So overall, you can kind of see LSAC design sort of separates everything into regions. And you can kind of see right here in the top right corner, scrolling down, you can see the Southeast region. For applicants year to date, we're up 2% from where we were last year at this time. Not massive at this point. I think a greater indication to see is the amount of applications, and that'll switch over in just a moment. But you can kind of see also where the score bands on to the right of that, the LSAT scores. So in the ranges of the 150 almost to the 160 range, you almost see about an 18% jump in high quality, kind of good standards of LSAT scores. You can kind of see where they are from last year at this time too. So we'll see how things go in terms of that unfolding. We're just 6 weeks into the semester and the cycle, so we have a long way to go for that too. I was just going to show you, this is the next slide for year-to-date US applications. Again, it's from 11/16, so just yesterday, I believe, is when that posted. So you can kind of see as the top right corner, Southeast, last year at this time, 8,200. We're now at 10,000, so we're up almost 23% in applications total in the Southeast from where we were at this time. I'm just going to kind of toggle over the Florida region. Hopefully you can see that from last week. So you can see the percentage in the Southeast of 22.6, but you can kind of see the state percentage is up almost 28% in application from where they were last year at this time. So for those of you that are applying the cycle, I would like to sort of
make sure I kind of instill an element of urgency in terms of making sure that you're not delaying. If you're sitting on applications, you're waiting on LSAT scores, you can certainly apply in the interim. If you are an applicant, your LSAT score automatically will come to us. So just stuff to think about though, but compared to 2 years ago at this time, applications are up 62% nationwide. So I'm just gonna stop sharing that part. And then I'm just gonna kind of jump up and just give you a little bit of a snapshot of, this last incoming class, which could be really kind of helpful to get an idea of where we're at. If somebody hasn't been to our campus, this is our campus. Stetson is Florida's first law school, which I mentioned started in 1900. In 1909 was the next law school in the state of Florida, which was the University of Florida Law School. It was the Stetson Law dean that left to go and open the University of Florida Law School. So it was just us and the University of Florida for about 3 decades before the next law school came along, which was Miami Law School, which came in the late 1920s. It was the Stetson Law dean that left to go and open Miami Law School. And then 4 decades after that, in 1970, Florida State graduated its first law class. So those are some of your top law schools in the state of Florida. I happen to think Tampa Bay is a well-situated law school and one of the best in the state, interfacing with the metropolitan area. It's great for networking. It's great for clinical and experiential learning opportunities, as Dr. Ross talked about, securing internships, those kinds of things. I mean, interfacing with the metro, which is probably the next big boom in the state of Florida. In Miami, there's 4 law schools. I mean, Gainesville, with all due respect to University of Florida, it's not interfacing directly with the metropolitan area. And so as people are making those decisions, think about where and what you're looking for in terms of a law school. But we are separate from our undergraduate school. Most law schools are one building on the undergraduate campus. We are completely separate. So everyone at our law school is here just for you. So it's worked out really well during the pandemic. Even last year during the throes of the pandemic, when it was kind of raging on, we actually had 1L classes in person. There were most law schools that actually had everything virtual, but because we had some autonomy and we just had law school students here, we were extremely strict, but it allowed our 1L students to have their 1L experience in person under really strict CDC standards. And we converted a lot of our common space to classroom space to allow for social distancing, but there was no leniency. We were strict, and things are loosening up a little bit. Even this year, we have our entire student body on campus still under very strict conditions as well. So, so let me just kind of move on with this slide. But so this was our last incoming. So our last incoming class, which entered just in the end of August, we had about 2,300 applications for about 245 seats. Median LSAT 157, 154 to 159, really competitive. I have a feeling that it's going to continue to ratchet up. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, we deferred about 60 students from last year. So we are down to about 180 students that we are currently looking to fill in terms of seats. That's full-time. We do have a part-time program as well, which brings in about 45 students a year. But if you're looking to aim for the LSAT score, I mean, of course, 154 to 159, the 25th to the 75th. But we offered about 4.5 million in scholarships to our incoming class. That's the most in our 121-year history. And that includes scholarships, anything from just a few thousand all the way up to full tuition and everything in between based on merit. I was telling Dr. Ross just as before we got started that there's just a fantastic Florida Gulf Coast student here at Stetson that I've been working with lately. She helped do a lot of videos for us, but she's on one of our advocacy boards. Stetson has been pretty much for the last quarter of a century the top advocacy school in the nation. She sits on one of those boards and is competing for national acclaim with some of our teams, but she is just rocking it. So, I mean, anyway, we've had great students. If you ever wanted to meet Florida Gulf Coast students that matriculated at Stetson, by all means, let me know. You can have a conversation with them about why they chose and what they like, what they don't like, all those things that make a difference. So choosing a law school, there's so many great law schools out there, but by all means, find a place where you think you'd be happy and do your best work and you feel like people are going to take an interest in your life and care that you're there and all those things. It makes a difference. So our profile,
If I could just interrupt,
yeah, sure.
ask you something before you move from that slide. You said that the LSAT scores have been up a lot. How did this year's entering class, what did that look like for 2020 and 2029 for the median?
Yeah, so we've actually went up 2 points from 155 to 157.
Okay.
75th percentile didn't really change. We're probably aiming for a 158 this year. I don't know. Who knows? The quality of the pool is just absolutely outstanding. And so I don't know. It's been quite interesting to watch, Dr. Ross, because I mean, you just see these quality applicants coming from all over the country. Last year was the first class in a year, excuse me, in my 15 years that we've ever recruited entirely virtual. I didn't do one event in person. It allowed us to actually bring in, you know, and increase the credentials, not only with racial, ethnic, and underrepresented minority students of just under 30%, but also to out-of-state students of almost 30% as well, out-of-state. So it allowed all those things to sort of kind of elevate themselves to, and allowed our reach to come in. So, you know, there's so many great law schools all over Tampa Bay. This seems to be attracting a lot of young people moving into this area, which has really been great for, you know, as I mentioned about like clinicals, opportunities, all those things. Yeah.
There's also a question in the chat that I think would fit now to asking about the part-time program, if you've seen an increase in the applications for the part-time as well.
Oh, yes, for sure. So when I included the 2,300 applications, that includes both full-time and part-time. The thing is, we bring in 45 part-time students. It's very different because full-time students apply to, on average, about 6 or 8 law schools, give or take, right? For part-time, a lot of times, you know, these are working professional people. They are geographically bound. They might have an obligation to stay in a particular area. So we don't need like 1,000 applicants to see 45 students. I mean, chances are we probably admit like 60 or 65 students in the part-time program in order to sit 45. Because, I mean, you know, we can really kind of tell if we offer them a seat, chances are they're going to take it because they're not planning to go anywhere else. So it's a little bit different, but the credentials are very similar. So I don't want you to think this is combined. This is both full-time and part-time. Some schools don't have a part-time program, so they don't have to include it. Typically, you know, the part-time program, maybe there's like a point or so difference. Overall, there's very little difference in the quality of the pool overall. So when you think about that. So you did see that we were slotted for about 245. We ended up bringing 277. Not exactly what we wanted, but I mean, we certainly make every effort to make sure that, you know, the access is still there. The student faculty ratio on average about 13, 14 to 1 and those ranges too. You can see the scholarship distribution too, the amount of students, just under 5% that receive full tuition. Even though we're a private school, don't think that the scholarship money isn't there. I mean, I've been here a long time. I've never seen us offer $4.5 million to the incoming class alone. So, and that equated to 95% of our students coming in with scholarship. And those scholarships, pretty much you have to maintain a 2.3 GPA in order to keep those. We don't do like a bait and switch, so, but maintaining a 2.3 GPA for those. If you are given a full tuition scholarship here at Stetson, after your 1L year, there's an expectation that you would be at least in the top 50% of the class. If you're operating at that level, we believe that you, and if you look at our standard 509 form, we're accredited with the American Bar Association. They have been since 1930. And the 509 form is published on every ABA accredited law school in the country. If you can't find it on any law school website, it is required to be there. And they will talk about conditional scholarships and those things, and that will include full tuition. Our revocation of conditional scholarships is 0. We make sure if you come in with that kind of money and those, that kind of quality of student, we believe you will have no problem maintaining the top 50%. And we talked about getting rid of it. At this point, we haven't. You know, typically it's never been an issue for our students. So 35 states, 112 undergraduate schools represented. Really great. I mean, you know, private schools can bring in as many out-of-state, in-state undergraduate schools as they want. It's different for public schools. Our largest out-of-state representation was in New York, and then Virginia, and then Alabama. Those were 3, our top undergraduate feeder school for this incoming class, with James Madison University in in Virginia, followed by, Penn State, and then I think it was University of Alabama after that. So really great representation all over the country. In terms of concentrations, 88 credits to be conferred your JD. Your first year classes are pretty much all going to be standard. At most law schools in the country, things do get a little bit different at different schools, so make sure you're aware of that. And so if you decide after your 1L year, usually in the summer between your 1L and 2L year, if you decide to do a concentration, you certainly can. We have 6, of which, Stetson's been a top advocacy students, number 5 in the nation in legal writing. It's really well known for its skills training, in conjunction with legal doctrine too. So business law, if anyone wants me to connect you with any of these directors of these concentrations as you explore these, I'm happy to do that. You don't have to come in with that idea of taking them. Some people do, some people don't. Some people just get a really strong sort of focus in a particular area, or they just do a large sort of general where they get different legal kind of classes. They take legal classes in lots of different areas to make sure that they have a broad range of understanding and those. So our alumni, they go all over the country. You can see there's 11,000 plus alums up and down the eastern seaboard, all along the southern border of the United States, the West Coast too. Midwest has probably the lowest representation out there, but it's probably the smallest populations. But if you want to take the Florida Gulf Coast university degrees somewhere, I believe you can package it up and go. I think you can do the same thing with Stetson as well. So if you have an interest in going somewhere, sometimes doing an internship of clinical opportunity while you're in law school. Stetson was the first law school in Florida to start clinical education back in the 1960s. It's a public defender clinic. It's still the quintessential public defender clinic in the state. And now we have 300 plus clinics in externship, more than we have students to fill them, but everyone is guaranteed at least one clinical experience. Most people do more than that while they're in law school. I know Dr. Ross talked about securing a clinic, or excuse me, an internship, a legal internship. Those are great. Sometimes they're difficult to find. If you have like good resources with Florida Gulf Coast, tap those if you really are interested in doing that. Some people want them, but they just can't seem to secure them. But if you have access, it sounds like you do down with your university. By all means, if you want to do that, do that. But it's not a requirement. Know that you can come in, as Dr. Ross said, with any major in undergrad and then go to law school. And if you come in, some people had to work. So some people don't have time to do an internship. They have to work because I had to work in college. Nobody, I had nobody helping me. I had to work all the way through. And it is what it is. So, those are still building good skill sets as well. So don't minimize the skill sets you get from, working your jobs doing right now. All those things have transferable skills, in my opinion, to law school in whatever capacity that you have. So, but if you ever want to meet alumni, if you ever want to, that are doing something that is of an interest for you, let me connect you with our alumni. They're always willing to have conversations with you about that. So keep that in mind as you go along. So tuition fees, that's our tuition. I wish it was lower. We're actually on the low end for 121-year-old private school, but it is still private school tuition. As I showed you in a previous slide, most people don't stay that. So if you're applying to Stetson and you get admitted and you get scholarship and you believe that you still, and it's early enough in the cycle and you think you can raise your LSAT score a few more points, I highly recommend you retake it, and we can always strategize together on that. You have a seat, you have scholarship, and you think you have a few more points. I will go through our scholarship grid and tell you, raise it 3 more points, and it could equate to this. If you're offered a $15,000 a year scholarship and you still have a few more points, and it could raise you up to like 23, 24, 25,000 times 3, that's $75,000 for you to pursue something that you are choosing to do. So I'm happy to strategize. So that's why early applicants can be really in a good place when it comes to having this time to sort of reconsider taking an LSAT, not because it's fun. It's only about you trying to get more money to be able to fund something that you want to do. So our electives, Stetson has one of the largest offerings of elective in the country when it comes to law school. I'm not going to go through all these two, but there's just a multitude of offerings that Stetson offers in terms of elective. They're obviously not offered every semester, but you get an idea of what's offered. And if you are interested in looking at those, I could certainly get you a view book that covers all the classes. You can find out when those would be offered if you plan to matriculate. So you can kind of plan your schedule and your class schedule while in here. You work with the registrar's office for that. So I was just going to end it with that part, just a little bit of an overview about Stetson. I did do a little bit more. Did you have any questions in the chat before maybe I get into maybe sort of the admissions checklist? I know you kind of addressed a little bit of that, Dr. Ross, but I just, I'm happy to go over that too, but I just want to make sure there's nothing popped up, or if, and maybe just extend it if somebody did have questions right now.
Yeah, anybody have questions at this point?
Yeah, just like come on screen and just ask a question and don't be shy. I mean, I'm here. Anything that you want to talk about, if there's something that's like, you know.
Oh, I think we have a hand up. Derek?
Derek? Yeah, go ahead, Derek.
So I was wondering, I think I'm graduating next summer. I haven't started doing any of the stuff for law school because I wasn't really thinking about it. I'm starting to think about it now. If that was something I wanted to do, so let's say I graduate next summer, could I still apply in the fall when I'm no longer a student at FGCU?
Oh yeah, lots of people do that, in fact, Derek. So, I mean, you know, there's the traditional path right out of undergrad, right into law school. You apply in your senior year. But if you're finishing next summer and we bring in a class once a year. Most law schools bring in and matriculate a class in the fall of every year. There's a few law schools that do spring. It's, you know, I have thoughts on that if you wanted to talk that. I'm not usually like the hugest fan. I do think that you kind of, you're a little bit off sort of, you know, off sort of the plan in terms of getting classes under your belt, being eligible for internships and clinicals while in your summer months. Some require a year of classes before you're eligible for them. So think about that and when you would graduate too. So there's pros and cons to both. But for you, if you're graduating next summer, you could certainly be working on your application now, or maybe you just want to focus on your grades. And when you graduate, then focus on doing a law school application. And you can certainly do that as well. We would open, if you graduate next summer, October 1 of every year, we open our cycle for the following fall. So if you're thinking this summer, so it'd be summer 2022, you would be looking at fall 2023 then if you matriculate, but it would be October of 2022, your cycle would open. So your timeline would be completely fine. Whatever it is, just make sure that you make sure your application is as strong as you can possibly get it. And if you need to take a few months to prepare for the LSAT, I mean, prepare. You can make more money doing well on the LSAT than you could taking a whole year off and just working. So I have literally seen people, you know, make close to a full tuition rides and, you know, they're just becoming outstanding students, but they were really committed to the LSAT. So use it as a tool to help pay for your law school education. And, you know, when I first started, I mean, we had like, what, $750,000 in scholarship now. Like, I mean, that's been more than quadrupled. There's significant cash to go to law school. So, and, you know, Florida Gulf Coast, I mean, great school. I've recruited there for years. We always get really great students that come out of there. So I will make sure you have my email address. So, you know, Derek, if you wanted to sort of strategize specifically, I know Dr. Ross can certainly do that too. I can certainly be a resource for you to help you. And that goes for anyone in here. If you want to just kind of strategize together to make sure that you're, you know, securing things at certain times, your LSAT account and your LSAT score are good for 5 years. So, you know, if you're ready to take it and you feel like you're ready, then take it. Most people take the LSAT more than once. Most people go up from the first one to the second one. So, you know, just once you sort of get your feet wet, it's now in the LSAT. It used to be an LSAT Flex during the pandemic. It went to the virtual digital version. In August of this year, they just moved it back to the LSAT. I think they call it the LSAT 4. When it was the Flex format, which was the digital virtual one, there was only 3 sections. Now there's 4. And that includes a beta test, which are a section that you don't even know what that is. So there's 4 sections again too, but it's offered 9 times a year. You go to the lsac.org website, and that's where you register for the test. That is the Law School Admissions Council. They write and administer that test. The score band for that for the LSAT is a 120 through 180. Our median, as I showed you in a previous slide, is a 157. But their school ranges all over the country. If you go to that website, you can plug in your credentials, and it in this one sort of filter that allows you to plug in your credentials, and you can see the law schools that are traditionally accepted people with those credentials. So that's another little tool for you as you kind of go about this process. But if you live in this area, I mean, you live on the Gulf Coast of Florida, maybe you don't want to go too far. I mean, we're your choice, right? I mean, it is right here. It's a good choice for you. It's a highly respected law school. And it's going to get you opportunities in the marketplace too. So does that answer your question a little bit, Derek? Yeah. Okay, good.
And I'll just jump in to endorse everything that you just said and add that when it comes to timing, I talk to students all the time who are thinking about, well, should I try to get an application in for this cycle? Should I wait a year? It depends on the person. And I could certainly talk to you about that. But my general advice is there's no harm if you can have a stronger application next year. There's no harm in waiting a year. And when people are really on the fence, my advice is always talk to the admissions officials themselves, because they'll be able to let you know where things stand. But generally speaking, don't be afraid to take that time, because it can really pay off in the long run.
Totally agree. And if it means like getting more money, so in scholarships, you have a chance. Like I'm fiscally conservative, and I'm on your behalf in the sense that I want to make sure that you are coming in with absolute most amount of money you can possibly secure, and I'll help you strategize, and and we can have long conversations too about making sure that you are in the best place when you start law school. I was just talking to a very good friend of mine today too. She actually graduated from Stetson, worked and she was working in our career development office too for a number of years too. But I mean, she was just granted loan forgiveness, so all of her student loans for law school have just been forgiven. And and that's another conversation for sure too. But I'm saying that there are opportunities for you. This is a big investment, no question, but you have to believe that given this education, your innate talent, your drive and determination, that you're going to get. Where did you go to law school, Dr. Ross?
I did not go to law school. So
oh, okay. I thought we had
No.
that conversation before.
No.
Okay. But didn't you get your doctorate degree at UCF, or is it USF?
So I was an undergrad at UCF, and
UCF. Okay.
then I went to University of Arizona for graduate school.
Okay, very good. I knew there was some UCF connection.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So it looks like Amit, did you have a question?
Yeah. This is my first semester of undergrad, but I don't know if it would be overkill to just start preparing for the LSAT like sometime next semester. But how much? I know that you said that usually by junior year we you should start preparing for the LSAT, but is it? Do you think that I would get like I don't know how do I say this, like a bonus or like a better advantage starting early? Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, everyone does things a little bit differently. Some people know they want to go to law school when they're an undergrad. Some people come to undergrad and they realize that they do want to go to law school. Some people decide in their senior year they want to go to law school. If you know you want to go to law school and you are in the early start of your undergraduate education, the LSAT is good for 5 years. But there's no problem with you kind of familiarizing yourself with that, because it's a skills-based test, right? So, and as you well know, any type of skill takes time. You don't learn it overnight. You have to build a skill, right? So the more confident you get in taking and practicing on the LSAT, and you just have time to sort of go through it and let it sort of, kind of penetrate into you, and in terms of like how you approach it and stuff, the confidence that you get your timing down. I mean, those things make a difference. If there's something wrong with you taking a practice test, you can go to Khan Academy, KHAN, Khan Academy, LSAT. They have these online free LSAT prep portals, and you can just go in and just sort of explore it for a bit and get an idea of what's expected on you on the LSAT. It's kind of a miserable test, right? Like, it's not the most fun thing you'll ever do in your whole life. I can tell you that right now, but it's a requirement. And so like 99% of law school applicants take the LSAT. There's a few that take the GRE, and not every law school takes it. So I would recommend taking the LSAT versus anything else. But yeah, you should explore it a little bit and see if, see how it goes for you. And then you can kind of identify some areas maybe that you can strengthen your score, because you can take, I think, like 5 times over a lifetime, 5 times in 7 years. They changed the LSAT, but every time you take it in like an official one, it's $200. So you don't want to just be like, oh, I'll just take the LSAT. You don't want to practice and pay $200 for a practice test. The practice test is to practice when you don't have to pay for it. And then when you take it. So, the test is good for 5 years. The score is good for 5 years. So even if you say you took it next year, you would be a sophomore, it would still be good by the time you graduate if it was a good score, that you could do that. But, what are your thoughts on that, Dr. Ross, in terms of people
Yeah.
thinking it?
I mean, I would say there's no harm in looking into it and exploring. You can do it without the stress that people have when they need to take it really soon. So I think it's good to take a look and see what the different sections are, what types of questions there are, maybe do some practice just to see where you are. The other thing I recommend when students are kind of far from when they need to take it is find some logic puzzles books. Sometimes you can find them in bookstores or grocery stores with the Sudoku and crossword puzzles, and they're called logic puzzles, and they're not exactly like logic games, but if you do those just as a kind of fun activity, I find them fun, but your opinion might vary, but they're not as stressful as actually doing practice tests, but it gets you thinking in that logical way that you can apply to it. So I usually tell students, do something like that, and look for classes that for the philosophy department and the math department both offer courses in logic, and that I know are particularly good at preparing. So do those kinds of things, but definitely don't do the kind of high stakes, stressful preparation until you're closer.
Yep, no, I totally agree too. Yeah, if you get a chance to take a logic class, I highly recommend one of those electives. I mean, it just does allow you to start thinking differently, where you can sort of just slowly get the mindset. Because, if you're able to secure that, people that start early in the process, those are the ones that oftentimes find themselves in a good place when they are applying to law school, because they're doing it over time. And it can really make a difference too. So lsac.org, you can actually buy previous actual tests, right? And they're just a few dollars each. So if you ever want to see an actual test that they just gave and within the last year or two, you can buy those tests directly from LSAC. You can, some people buy I think you can buy I don't know, a dozen of them, something like that, for $75 if you want to do that. And you and your friends can kind of practice and stuff too. So it might be a thing to do as a student organization and stuff like that, to see how those go. And you can kind of see what it's like under time conditions, etc. So just think about those kinds of things. But yeah, I don't know. You have a pre-law group on campus, do you not?
Well, I was actually going to say, somebody just asked in the chat if there is any kind of study group organization for students, and we don't have one that I know of.
Okay.
And there was a pre-law group several years ago, but I think they're inactive right now. So for those of you who are, starting off at FGCU, freshmen, sophomores, if that's something you'd like to do, you might be able to reactivate the Phi Alpha Delta chapter here. So you might want to look into that as a registered student organization, or to start something up to have that kind of study group. I think that's another great thing that you can do in advance when you're not under the gun to take the test right away. There was also a question I wanted to get to in the chat about student mental health resources at Stetson.
Sure.
So if you could just talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so mental health in law school, that's a big deal. We take that very seriously. Everything is sort of about wellness. We actually have two counselors, mental health counselors on our staff to help students too. So they're right here on campus. to help with that. But I mean, it's a pretty supportive group. There's so many units on campus that are very supportive in terms of that too. I know our dean is all about wellness. I mean, they are like, there's co-curriculars, there's student activities that are outside the realm of actually class. So I mean, yoga and all these things that they focus on in terms of having an outlet. We have a swimming pool on campus. We have a workout facility right here as well that you can, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, swipe card access. So a lot of those things about wellness and making sure that you have the support. I mean, your faculty become mentors, your upperclassmen become mentors. Your alumni, if you want to actually connect with alumni doing certain things, they become sort of good mentors that help strategize. But career and professional development, they're very good about helping keep you on track and helping keep you on pace to sort of maybe keep stress levels a little bit lower. I mean, Stetson's employment rates are really high. So securing jobs, in fact, you know, I was just talking to career and professional development people today too, and they're talking about like just employers that are just calling. It's like, where are the applicants? I mean, there's more jobs than there are people applying right now. So the job market is actually good. I mean, who knows how all that's going to unfold. These ebbs and flows in markets in terms of employment and even law school applications, they change. So right now it's kind of a pretty good market for graduates of law school. They can cherry pick their jobs right now. And they're just like, well, they're going to be really selective and they're going to choose where they want to go rather than taking the first thing that gets offered.
Okay. There's some other questions in the chat I want to get to, but I see Peyton has her hand up, so we go to her next.
Sure.
Oh, hi. So I heard that like I've been doing research. I'm in my first semester at FGC too. That like the logical reasoning, those two sections of the LSAT were the most important because they would like be the strongest indicator of how you would perform like in law school. I was just wondering if that was true.
You know, it's interesting, you know, you get the breakdown. We don't really get the breakdown. We get the score. So, you know, for me to say, yes, that's true, I don't know. We get the collective score and that's what we use. We don't break it down and how that score was actually combined and assessed. So we get the total score. I mean, I would like to think that like, you know, analytical reasoning, logical reasoning, I mean, you know, as you know, the LSAT doesn't test you on the law, it tests you on kind of a skill set, right? And so, you know, if you have sort of analytical skills, if you have logical kind of basis, so, you know, they believe, and it's still the best indicator for law school success is the law school admissions test. There's never been anything else that's indicated better. So, you know, having strengths in all those, you know, the other one is reading comprehension. So, and so those are the three areas of the test, right? So they believe the combination of those. So I don't know if one will certainly prioritize, maybe it gives you an advantage within class because you think differently, right? You know, you have sort of an analytical mind, or you can sort of logically think on your feet. I know a lot of students that are planning to be litigators. I mean, the big thing is like being able to sort of assess things really quickly, be able to think on your feet and be able to make, you know, pose questions, make articulations, et cetera, too. So I would like to think that they all matter. I really don't know if one kind of supersedes the other. I don't know that 100%, but it's a good question, Peyton. But hopefully you're strong in all those areas and it won't even make a difference.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you.
Sure thing.
Very good. There've been a couple of questions in the chat about admissions, and one was about how many extracurricular activities would be good to have an application. Another one is a question from a graduate student asking how their graduate school GPA factors in, or if it's just based on their undergraduate.
Okay, so sure. Let me address that. So extracurricular. So like, in my opinion, don't placate to the law school. If you're able to do them, do them. But again, some of you, like, you know, I've known so many students that, you know, their parents lost jobs during the pandemic and stuff, and some people had to step up and work, and undergraduate students I'm talking to, like, there's just a whole litany of things that could happen. Some people had family members. It was just a really difficult time for so many people. And so if you're able to do co-curriculars, I mean, by all means do them, but not at the expense of your grades, right? Grades, that's your most important thing right now, is to get good grades, because that's what's going to translate well into like scholarship, et cetera, too. But if you're interested in getting involved with something like a student organization on campus, If you're able to secure an internship, a clinical opportunity, as Dr. Ross talked about, I mean, by all means do it. But make sure that you protect your time and you make sure that you're not extending or stressing yourself to a point where something's going to be impacted, and you don't want it to be grades, because once the grades are done, there's nothing you can do about it. That's the grades that we report. Everyone has to report one. An undergraduate GPA is required to get into law school. Some people have graduate degrees. It seems like that in the question. We have to report the undergraduate degree, even though you have graduate school work. Most people do better in graduate school than they do in undergrad, because you have to have a minimum of a 3.0 to stay in graduate school, whereas undergrad, you have to have a 2.0, I believe, depending on, it might change in schools too. So most people do better in graduate school. It's a bonus. It shows on your application. It's another level of strength in your application that show that you can handle the rigors of graduate or in professional school, whatever it was, on top of having an undergraduate degree. But some people, if they did have sort of a lagging undergraduate GPA and they want to strengthen it, some people get a graduate degree to do that. But again, always have good conversations with the law school admissions officers at any of your schools that they're looking at. Everyone might do it a little bit differently. I love to see it if somebody's doing that, but only because they want to do it, not necessarily placating to the law school. Like, don't spend thousands of dollars on a degree that you think that we want to see, but you don't really want to do it. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that at all. But if you want to do it, by all means, do it and do well. And all those things are going to be strengths in an application if you have it. So hopefully I answered both of those at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's our recurring theme is do the things that you want to do, that you're passionate about. Don't try to read the minds of admissions officers several years in advance, because it's not the path forward. Just do the things you like, and that shows in a personal statement when it's something that you're passionate about.
Without a doubt, remember who's reading your law school application as well. It's not your peers. It's law school admissions officers has been doing this forever. It's faculty members. That is real. We have every law school is going to have a faculty admissions committee. We're a faculty-run institution. So they, if we have questions about, applicants or character and fitness or anything of that nature, we push them out to the faculty. If they're otherwise qualified, outright, those are often handled by myself and others too. But just remember, we've been doing this a long time. I can think, read through an application. Every application maybe takes about 8 or 10 minutes to read through, and each application, give or take, some a little bit longer. Some are just they're just really stellar applications. You can read through them. There's no character and fitness. They're qualified. They've been excellent students in all undergraduate. On the CAS report that's submitted with your application, we can see every year and how you did, every class you took, the grade that you got, where you graduated relative to your classmates in your graduating class. The average LSAT score coming out of your school and that year, we can see all this information on your CAS report, which is your credential assembly service that comes out, which you have to complete and set up with the Law School Admissions Council to submit your application to an ABA accredited law school.
Okay. Well, we're running up to the end of our time, so I'm going to have just a couple of rapid fire questions from the chat for you. So there were a couple of questions about timing for this cycle, whether if it's still considered early enough for scholarships if you apply in December. Yeah.
Without a doubt, Dr. Ross. So our priority scholarship deadline is on the books as March the 15th. Our cycle ends May the 15th. However, we left it on the books because I didn't know if we should change it up to February, because it didn't align with an LSAT kind of score release. So I would say if you are applying the cycle and you're getting it in this calendar year, I think you're great. Your timeline is terrific. If you can get it in over the holiday break, that's terrific too, or even right after the break. I just don't want to see people just holding onto an application because they're just sort of dragging their feet a little bit. Don't do that this cycle. I don't want you to not get the opportunities you seek. And you've worked really hard, and I just want you to sort of get this opportunity. And if you have any question about timelines, I'll make sure, again, I'll post it in the chat so you have my email address so we can always engage in one-on-one conversations and strategize together. In addition, with Dr. Ross, you can use both of us to help you with this whole process.
And I think I've noticed more students are thinking about waiting a little bit because they've heard that the LSAT scores have gone up so much and it's more competitive. But I've been encouraging people, you pull the trigger, go for it, get that application in because the timing does matter. Last questions here. One was about if there were any other, if there were any kind of summer programs or something for undergraduates to learn more about law school that Stetson offers. I know of one at FSU and FIU that both.
Yeah, they do. They do summer programs too. We do a whole series of sort of prospective student stuff. So if you go on the front page, to our admissions page too, we're doing stuff on like, covering different areas of law school, different concentrations, how to use, sort of the career office and the clinical office. And so we're having a whole series of those too. Some schools do summer programs that you have to do. We've certainly entertained that idea. Some do them, some don't. I mean, I know FSU has had a good one, but you have to have faculty that are willing to do it. Been able to sort of convince them.
Well, if you can send me the dates when those are coming up, I'll make sure as I send a newsletter for political science students, so they'll at least get those. And the last question here was so students said about the dual JD MBA program. Are there any plans to expand into other master's degrees?
We used to have a JD MD program. In all my time here, we had one person do it. And he was admitted full tuition here at Stetson. He was such a rock star, and he was also admission to med school at the same time. You had to get into both schools at the same time in order to coordinate that. But it was in combination with the University of South Florida Med School. So when he finished here, he went right over there. So he graduated the #1 student in his class here at Stetson, and now has matriculated med school. So in all of our time, there was one person. It was a very difficult thing to do. So it would be different if we were on the main campus, but because we're separate with our undergraduate school, some law schools have, their law school, one building on the undergraduate campus, but then they have access to other stuff right there. It is more difficult because our undergraduate school is 3 hours away. Otherwise, we would have a lot more of those. But as it is, the MBA faculty either come to campus, you don't have to go anywhere and decide to do an MBA, which wouldn't start until your 2L year. So it allows, that's the degree, but we do have a couple of broad ones where it's like a dual degree. It's like a JD Master's in International Economic Law. There's another one too. I'd have to look at that. I'm trying to remember what it is too. So we do have 2 of those. So we have the 3, but I don't at this point have any more to offer. It is the International Economic Law, and the International European Business Law. So those are the dual degrees. So those are the 3 that we have. I wish we had more, but we don't.
All right. Well, we are running out of our formal time, so I think we'll draw the formal event to a close. Though, if you have a quick question, we can stick around for a few more minutes. And I do want to note that the last comment there in the chat, that career services here at FGCU is available to you. They are a great resource. You should absolutely take advantage of their services. Take a look at the calendar of upcoming events. There are a lot of ways that they can help get you on your path to grad school, law school, career, wherever you're headed next. And I see Darren's put his email in the chat as well. I'll make sure that you all get that when I send out the additional information.
And if you are trying to apply this cycle, I mean, just email me and just say, can you send me a fee waiver, and I'll just send you that. So don't pay for it. Make sure that you reach out. It's not a bother. Don't pay for those kinds of. There's only a few things I can waive. That's one.
Absolutely. That's another tip there. When you are applying, ask for fee waivers.
Ask for fee waivers.
One thing that has been in common from we've had a few other schools come in previous years for these kinds of events, and the admissions officials have consistently said, call us, email us, reach out to us. So I have passed that along, and I always emphasize that because they know better than I do their specific situation and policies, and they're the ones with the fee waivers. So it's always good to reach out to them. All right, thank you everyone for being here. We appreciate your attendance here, and we're glad to see so many interested students from all across the years and the majors. And please do reach out to us if we can be of any help on your path forward. All right.
Thank you,
Have a
Dr.
good
Ross.
evening, everybody.
Thank you, Mary, very much for setting
Yes.
this all up.
Thank you, Darren, for being
Yeah,
here.
my pleasure. Stay in touch with me. You're not bothering me, so whatever I can do to help.